Rejoicing isn't rooted in circumstances. It's anchored in meaning, resilience, and the choice to remain whole in a broken world. This truth feels countercultural in a society where joy is often portrayed as a product of perfect conditions, ideal outcomes, and unbroken plans. We're told, subtly and overtly, that we'll be happy when things fall into place, when the pain stops, when people treat us right, when the diagnosis is reversed, or when the dream finally materializes. But if we build joy on the back of circumstances, it will collapse the moment life doesn't cooperate. The deeper truth is that rejoicing is not about what's happening to you, it's about what's happening within you. It's about choosing to meet life with a full heart, even when that heart is bruised. Rejoicing is an act of defiance in a world that often feels uncertain and harsh. It's a whisper of hope in the middle of a storm. It's the quiet, daily decision to stay connected to your values, your soul, your purpose, no matter what tries to pull you away. Resilience isn't flashy. It doesn't always look like grand comebacks or epic victories. Sometimes it looks like getting up when you don't feel like it. Sometimes it looks like softening when bitterness would be easier. It's not the absence of brokenness, it's the refusal to be defined by it. And in that sacred defiance, rejoicing is born, not because life is easy, but because you have decided to find meaning, to create purpose, to hold on to your light, even when the night is long. There is a kind of strength that only suffering can teach, a kind that doesn't show up in control or pride, but in surrender and humility. The people who truly know how to rejoice are not the ones who've lived unscathed lives. They are the ones who've been to the edge and back, who have sat in grief, faced their shame, questioned everything, and still returned to themselves. These are the souls who know that rejoicing is not performance, it's presence. It's about showing up fully to whatever the day holds and choosing to see beauty, even if it's buried beneath layers of loss. You don't have to wait for life to be fixed before you live it. You don't have to wait for every problem to be solved before you allow yourself to feel joy. If you wait for the pain to end before you open your heart again, you may be waiting a lifetime. Life was never meant to be perfect. It was meant to be real. And the realness is where the richness lives. Rejoicing doesn't mean ignoring reality. It means holding reality in one hand and hope in the other. It means acknowledging what hurts while still believing in what heals. So many of us have been taught to protect ourselves from disappointment by not hoping too much, not celebrating too soon, not feeling joy too deeply. But when we do that, we don't just avoid disappointment, we also shut out the very experiences that give life meaning. We think we're playing it safe, but what we're really doing is numbing ourselves. Rejoicing, on the other hand, requires vulnerability. It asks us to risk being open, to feel deeply, to trust that even if joy is fleeting, it is still worth having. When you rejoice in the middle of pain, you're not being faked. You're being brave. You are declaring that your spirit is not controlled by your circumstances, that your worth is not dependent on everything going right, that your soul still believes in something good even when the evidence is hard to see. This is what it means to be resilient. Not to escape the fire, but to become refined by it. Not to deny your wounds, but to find wisdom within them. There are people who will never understand this kind of rejoicing. They will say, "How can you smile when things are falling apart?" But what they don't see is that your joy was born in the ashes. They don't know how many nights you cried, how many times you felt like giving up, how much you've lost along the way. They don't see that your laughter is layered with survival, that your peace is hard won, that your faith was forged in the dark. You don't owe them an explanation. You just keep choosing joy, not to prove anything, but because your soul deserves to breathe. To rejoice no matter what doesn't mean you're not hurting. It doesn't mean you got it all figured out. It means that you've made a decision to live from the inside out, not the outside in. It means you've realized that peace isn't found in control, but in surrender. That strength isn't found in force, but in gentleness. That joy isn't found in perfection, but in presence. And this kind of joy cannot be taken from you because it was never dependent on what life gave you. It came from what you gave yourself. This doesn't mean that pain doesn't matter. On the contrary, pain becomes the very soil where deep joy grows. If you avoid pain at all costs, you also avoid transformation. And without transformation, joy remains shallow. Real joy requires depth. And depth only comes when you've gone through something. When you've looked your fear in the face and decided to keep going. When you've let go of illusions and chosen to stand in the truth. When you've loved, lost, and dared to love again. You can be both joyful and broken, both strong and unsure, both grateful and grieving. You are not one-dimensional. And your joy doesn't have to fit into someone else's idea of what it should look like. You are allowed to rejoice in your own way. Maybe for you, rejoicing means getting out of bed when the weight feels too heavy. Maybe it means finding a moment of peace in the middle of a chaotic day. Maybe it means creating, dancing, resting, breathing, forgiving. Whatever it looks like, let it be yours. The most powerful people are not those who never fall. They are the ones who keep rising, who keep choosing love over fear, truth over image, joy over despair. They don't pretend everything is okay. They simply choose not to let the hard parts of life steal the sacred parts. They know that life is fragile, and instead of letting that break them, they let it wake them to what matters, to what lasts, to when his meaning is not handed to us. It is made often in the middle of mess. When you choose to rejoice, you are choosing to be a meaning maker, to take what's been broken and build something beautiful, to take what's been lost and find what still remains, to take what has hurt you and turn it into healing. This is no small thing. This is how light returns. And sometimes rejoicing looks like silence, like stillness, like letting the world spin while you tend to your own soul. Not every joyful moment is loud. Some are quiet, tender, sacred. Some are born in solitude, in letting go, in surrender, in breath, in trust. The world may never applaud those moments, but those are the moments that change you. Those are the moments that teach you how to be whole, no matter what is broken. The greatest freedom you will ever feel is when you realize that your joy is no longer at the mercy of other people's behavior or life's unpredictability. When you stop outsourcing your peace, when you stop waiting for life to cooperate before you allow yourself to feel alive, when you take your power back, not by controlling everything, but by choosing how you respond. By deciding that your heart is worth protecting, that your soul is worth nourishing, that your joy is worth fighting for. This is not a one-time decision. It is a practice, a rhythm, a commitment. You will forget. You will fall back into fear. That's okay. Just return. Return to your truth. Return to your center. Return to the knowledge that no matter what happens, you are allowed to feel joy. You are allowed to dance, to sing, to rest, to love, to breathe deeply. You are allowed to celebrate your existence, not because it's been easy, but because it's been yours. There is something incredibly powerful about a person who has learned to rejoice regardless. They carry a different kind of energy, a groundedness, a quiet light. They don't need to prove anything. They don't need to win every battle. Their peace is not performative. It's embodied. It's in their laughter, their presence, their warmth. These are the people who change the world. Not because they shout the loudest, but because they live the deepest. If you've been waiting for permission to rejoice, this is it. If you've been waiting for things to be perfect before you embrace your life, stop waiting. Perfection is not the prerequisite for joy. Presence is. Meaning is. Resilience is. You can be right in the middle of the hardest season of your life and still find something worth smiling about. You can be surrounded by uncertainty and still feel rooted. You can be hurting and still hold joy in your hands like a fragile flame. Because that flame, that spark, that truth inside of you, it's enough. It's always been enough. And as long as you have that, you have everything you need to keep going, to keep healing, to keep rejoicing. Not because life makes it easy, but because you've decided that your spirit will not be dimmed by temporary darkness. This is what it means to live from the inside out, to let joy rise, not as a reward, but as a right, not as an accident, but as an act of courage. And when you begin to live this way, the world around you starts to shift. Maybe not immediately, maybe not dramatically, but quietly, steadily, meaningfully. You begin to attract peace. You begin to radiate truth. You begin to live fully, even when life is messy. And in that quiet revolution, you begin to discover the deepest truth of all, that you are already whole. That nothing needs to be added or fixed for you to be worthy of joy. That your capacity to rejoice, especially when it doesn't make sense, is the very thing that makes you powerful beyond measure. Focusing on yourself aligns your attention with what truly matters: healing, purpose, clarity, and inner power. This isn't about becoming self-centered or indifferent to others. It's about finally recognizing that your life, your energy, and your time are sacred. It's about learning that constantly pouring yourself out for people who don't value you or understand your boundaries leads only to exhaustion, confusion, and emptiness. At some point, you realize that survival isn't enough. You want meaning, you want wholeness, you want peace. And that begins by redirecting the gaze inward and giving yourself the care you've been waiting for the world to give you. Healing doesn't happen when you're constantly distracted, overcommitted, or entangled in other people's drama. It happens when you slow down and listen to the quiet voice inside that says something needs to change. That voice doesn't shout, it whispers. But its wisdom is profound. Focusing on yourself gives that voice room to be heard. It allows you to feel your feelings fully, not just react to them. It creates space for self-inquiry, honesty, and tenderness. And in that space, you start to recognize wounds that you've ignored for years. Wounds that have shaped your patterns, beliefs, and relationships. You can't heal what you don't acknowledge. You can't transform what you refuse to face. There is something powerful about choosing yourself. Not because you're rejecting others, but because you're finally honoring your own journey. You've spent so long trying to prove your worth, so long trying to be everything to everyone, so long trying to keep peace at your own expense. But the truth is, your worth isn't something you earn. It's something you uncover when you stop abandoning yourself. You start showing up for the little parts of you that have been overlooked, suppressed, or shamed. You begin to nurture your mind, protect your heart, and rebuild your spirit. And from that rebuilding comes a strength that isn't loud or aggressive. It's quiet, rooted, unshakable. Focusing on yourself doesn't mean you stop caring about others. It means you stop shrinking to fit into spaces that demand your silence. You stop bending to please people who refuse to meet you in your fullness. You stop seeking permission to live a life that is honest, intentional, and aligned with your values. This alignment changes everything. You begin to say no without guilt. You begin to rest without shame. You begin to ask yourself, before asking anyone else, is this true to me? Is this right for my soul? The moment you start living from that place is the moment your life begins to shift. Clarity comes when the noise dies down. When you're no longer reacting to every opinion, every expectation, every rejection. When you're no longer fueled by fear or the need to be chosen. You stop looking for validation in places that only drain you. You stop explaining yourself to people committed to misunderstanding you. Clarity whispers, you were never broken. You were simply buried under layers of conditioning and performance. It's a powerful realization that coming home to yourself is the greatest journey you'll ever take. And that journey begins the moment you stop chasing and start listening. When you focus on yourself, you rediscover your voice. Not the voice you use to please others, but the voice that speaks from your soul. That voice has always been there. It just got drowned out by the noise of should and must and what will they think. It got buried under years of performing for acceptance. But as you return to yourself, you begin to hear it again. That voice reminds you of your dreams, your values, your passions. It challenges you to live more authentically. It encourages you to let go of what no longer serves you, even if it's familiar, even if it's scary. Purpose doesn't arrive all at once. It unfolds as you begin to align your daily choices with your deepest values. You might start small, choosing rest over hustle, truth over comfort, growth over approval, but those small choices compound. They create a life that feels deeply lived, not just endured. Purpose isn't always about what you do, it's about how you live. It's about presence, integrity, and alignment. When you live with purpose, you stop existing for the next achievement or validation hit. You begin to live with intention, even in the ordinary. You realize that your presence is your power, and that showing up for yourself is the most revolutionary act you can commit to. Inner power doesn't come from controlling everything. It comes from trusting yourself through everything. It's built in the quiet moments when you choose to sit with your discomfort instead of avoiding it. It's built when you make decisions that honor your truth, even if they disappoint others. It's built when you learn to regulate your emotions, own your patterns, and break generational cycles. This power is steady. It's not performative. It doesn't need attention. It radiates from within and draws boundaries without apology. It says, I know who I am now, and I will no longer betray that knowing. You begin to experience peace, not because life gets easier, but because you are no longer at war with yourself. You've stopped abandoning your own needs. You've stopped chasing people who can't see you. You've stopped performing for love and started practicing self-compassion. The peace that follows is subtle but unmistakable. It's the peace of walking away without resentment, the peace of choosing solitude over toxicity, the peace of knowing you don't have to convince anyone of your worth. This peace is your birthright, and you protect it fiercely, not out of fear, but out of deep reverence for your soul. It's not always easy to stay focused on yourself, especially in a world that rewards self-sacrifice, overextension, and constant output. You will be called selfish. You'll be misunderstood. People who benefited from your lack of boundaries will be uncomfortable when you find them. But don't let that stop you. Because the people who truly love you, who see your soul, will celebrate your growth, not shame it. They will honor your boundaries, not resent them. They will grow with you, not try to hold you back. And the people who fall away, let them. Their departure creates space for something more aligned. There's something sacred about watching your life begin to align, not because you forced it, but because you surrendered. You stopped hustling for your worth and started honoring it. You stopped settling for crumbs and started nourishing your spirit. You stopped trying to fix others and started healing yourself. And as you do that, your external world begins to mirror your internal state. Relationships shift, opportunities come, peace expands. Not because everything suddenly becomes perfect, but because your energy has changed. And energy is everything. You'll begin to trust yourself more. You'll stop doubting your intuition. You'll recognize that your body holds wisdom, that your nervous system isn't overreacting. It's responding to years of neglect and trauma. And as you learn to soothe and support yourself, your body softens, your heart opens, your mind clears. You start to feel safe, maybe for the first time in years, not because the world is safe, but because you've become your own sanctuary, and you've become a place you can trust. You stop asking, what do they think of me, and start asking, what do I think of me? And that shift, it changes everything. You're no longer available for relationships that require self-abandonment. You're no longer chasing closure from people incapable of giving it. You're no longer playing small to make others comfortable. You've learned that focusing on yourself isn't about isolation, it's about reclamation. Reclaiming your time, your energy, your truth, your joy. This path isn't linear. You'll have moments of doubt. You'll want to go back to what's familiar, but don't keep going. The discomfort of growth is temporary. The pain of staying stuck lasts a lifetime. And the more you choose yourself, the more rooted you become. You'll start to trust that your needs matter, that your dreams are valid, that your boundaries are necessary. And from that rooted place, you'll rise, not in ego, but in authenticity. Eventually, you'll notice that you no longer crave what once consumed you. You won't be triggered by the same old patterns. You'll walk away from what once held you hostage, not because you don't care, but because you care about yourself too much to stay. That's what focus gives you, the strength to choose differently, the clarity to see what aligns and what doesn't, the courage to act on what you know. You'll realize that the life you were searching for was never out there. It was waiting inside of you, waiting for you to stop running, waiting for you to return, waiting for you to believe that your healing is holy, your peace is powerful, and your self-worth is not negotiable. You are not too much. You are not too sensitive. You are not too broken. You are awakening. You are becoming. You are healing. And every day that you choose to focus on yourself, you are choosing to become more of who you were always meant to be, not who the world told you to be. You're choosing authenticity over approval, growth over comfort, wholeness over performance. And that choice, again and again, will lead you home. Would you like me to generate a timestamp and SEO package, title, hashtags, keywords, etc., for this speech as well? When you stop chasing validation and start cultivating peace, life begins to reflect your inner transformation. Doesn't happen all at once. It's not a sudden shift you broadcast on social media or announce in a conversation. It's quiet, subtle, often invisible to those who aren't paying attention. But you feel it. You know it's real. When the things that used to steal your sleep no longer keep you up at night. You know it's happening when you realize you're not waiting for applause, approval, or permission to be at peace with who you are. Chasing validation is exhausting. It's a race without a finish line. No matter how much affirmation you receive, it's never enough because your sense of self is dependent on external voices, One day you're up because someone complimented you. The next day you're down because someone criticized you or ignored you. It's a roller coaster of emotional highs and lows driven by other people's opinions, many of whom don't even know the real you. Validation is like sugar. It gives you a quick high, but it leaves you craving more and never fully satisfied. Eventually something breaks. Maybe it's a betrayal that cuts too deep. Maybe it's burnout from trying to be everything to everyone. Maybe it's a quiet moment where you hear yourself think, truly think, for the first time in years. And in that moment, you begin to wonder, what if I stopped trying so hard to be enough for others and started believing I already am? That's when the journey begins. That's when you realize that peace isn't a reward you earn by being perfect. It's a birthright you reclaim when you stop abandoning yourself. Cultivating peace is a radical act. In a world that celebrates hustle, performance, and perfection, choosing peace can feel like rebellion. It requires you to slow down in a culture that idolizes speed. It demands that you say no in a world that expects you to say yes. It means resting when you're told to grind harder. It's countercultural. But it's also transformational. Because peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of wholeness. It's not about pretending everything is okay. It's about being okay even when things aren't perfect. When you begin to cultivate peace, you start to make different choices. You walk away from chaos without needing to justify your exit. You let go of relationships that thrive on drama, control, or inconsistency. You choose quiet over noise, stillness over distractions, truth over performance. You stop performing for love and start practicing self-compassion. You stop tolerating what depletes you just to avoid disappointing others. You realize that self-betrayal is the highest cost of people-pleasing, and you decide you're no longer willing to pay that price. At first, this path feels lonely. You'll question yourself. You'll grieve the version of you that lived for approval. You might even miss the validation, the attention, the roles you used to play. But over time, something more beautiful emerges. A deep stillness begins to grow within you. You begin to like your own company. You begin to hear your own voice again, the one you silenced to fit in. You begin to feel whole in your own presence. That's peace, that's power, that's transformation. You'll notice how your external world starts to mirror your inner shifts. Toxic relationships begin to fall away. Chaos loses its grip. Things that used to trigger you now feel neutral, not because the world changed, but because you did. You stopped feeding dysfunction with your energy. You stopped reacting and started responding. You began to regulate your nervous system, honor your body, and trust your intuition. And the world responded to that shift by offering more of what you aligned with: clarity, respect, ease. Inner transformation isn't loud. It doesn't scream, "Look at me." It simply moves differently. You become less reactive, less available for drama, more intentional with your time, more present in your relationships. You start to create boundaries, not as a wall, but as a form of self-respect. You stop needing to prove your worth because you've already reclaimed it. You no longer chase people who can't see your value. Instead, you protect your peace and attract those who recognize and honor it. Peace gives you clarity. It helps you see what's yours to carry and what's not. You stop internalizing other people's projections. You stop rescuing people who aren't ready to be saved. You stop over-explaining yourself. You start letting silence speak for you. You trust that not every battle is yours to fight. Not every opinion deserves a response. Not every invitation requires a yes. That's not indifference, it's wisdom. It's discernment, it's maturity. Life starts to feel less like a performance and more like a presence. You're no longer obsessed with curating an image. You're more concerned with cultivating a life that feels good on the inside, even if it doesn't impress anyone on the outside. You no longer seek to be liked. You seek to be real. And in that authenticity, you find the kind of peace that can't be bought or faked, the kind that anchors you when everything around you feels uncertain. This kind of peace doesn't mean you're unaffected by life. It means you're deeply rooted in yourself. You'll still feel disappointment, rejection, and heartbreak, but you won't be defined by it. You'll learn to hold pain and peace in the same hand. You'll understand that resilience isn't about pretending you're fine. It's about being honest with yourself and still choosing to move forward with grace. That's transformation. That's healing. That's strength. When you stop chasing validation, you start seeing clearly who's really for you and who's just for what you give them. You stop clinging to relationships built on your silence and sacrifice. You let go of dynamics that require you to shrink, perform, or disappear. And while that letting go hurts, it's also liberating, because on the other side of that release is a deeper relationship with yourself. You become your own safe space, your own source of comfort, your own validation. You begin to trust that your inner guidance is enough. That you don't need a committee to affirm your decisions, that your intuition is wise and your discernment is trustworthy. You start to build a life that reflects your truth, not your fear, a life that honors your energy, your vision, your values, and in doing so, you step into a kind of power that doesn't demand attention, it simply exists. Your transformation becomes a quiet revolution. Not because you shout louder, but because you live softer. Not because you prove more, but because you rest more. Not because you impress others, but because you've impressed yourself. You start living a life that aligns with your spirit, not your survival patterns. And that shift, that's what freedom feels like. Stop asking, what do they think of me? And start asking, does this feel true to me? You stop needing constant reassurance and start building self-trust. You stop outsourcing your joy and begin cultivating it from within. You learn that peace isn't passive. It's active. It's something you choose again and again, especially when everything tempts you to react, perform, or over-explain. You stop trying to be palatable. You start being real. You stop waiting for others to choose you. You choose yourself. You stop begging for love that costs you your sanity. You create love within. You become the love, the safety, the home you always wanted. And life, it begins to change. Not because the people around you changed. Not because your circumstances suddenly became perfect. But because your energy changed. Because your mindset shifted. Because you now move from a place of alignment, not desperation. You stopped chasing, you started attracting. You stopped performing, you started becoming. Every time you say no to what drains you, you say yes to what restores you. Every time you protect your peace, you deepen your healing. Every time you walk away from what no longer serves you, you walk toward who you're meant to be. And slowly, quietly, profoundly, your life transforms, not by force, but by flow. Not by chasing, but by choosing. You realize that the most important relationship you'll ever have is the one you have with yourself. That self-abandonment was never love. That people-pleasing was never peace. That external approval was never the source of your worth. And in that knowing, you become whole, you become free. Would you like a timestamp, SEO description, and hashtags package for this speech?